And then I noticed that a lot of folks, they take this foundation, which should consider the scriptures for alignment, because every rule that was written, right? Every rule that we are to follow, they were written because somebody lost a body part. Blood was shed. So now we have a new rule. So the book gets thicker and thicker and thicker. But what's happening with the thickness of the book, these serious injuries and fatalities, SIFs, is the numbers remain the same.
Hey, and welcome to the Electrical Safety Podcast. My name is John Travis. I'm your host, and today we have Brent Jeffries. He's the VP of Field Operations and Safety Instructor with Beer Meters. Brent, thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely, Jonathan. I appreciate the invite, and it's great to be here with you today.
Yeah, so we usually just get started off. I'd love to kind of find out, how people got started in the industry and sort of what led them eventually into getting into safety. So you can go back as far as you'd like, and just curious how you got started in utility world and maybe how you find your way to beer.
Sure. Yeah, just real briefly, Walter Beer, he married my mom when I was about 5. So he became my new dad since 5 years old. So he considers me his son, and he's my dad. So we were raised in Arizona, and went to high school in Arizona, and went to college. And interestingly enough, I went to NAU and studied for 2.5 years. I studied electrical engineering. So that was kind of cool. And unbeknownst to me, after 2.5 years, I decided to quit college and start my own company in Arizona. And basically, I started a remodeling business and landscaping company, and met my wife. We adopted 3 beautiful children and raised them up in Arizona. And after owning the company for about 29 years, my family contacted me here in South Carolina, and they said, "Hey, why don't you sell your company and come work with us?" And my wife and I said, after 29 years of owning a company, we had about 40, 50 employees. It's pretty tough. And, learning how to deal with people and talk with people, communicate and all that. It was like, maybe we could take a break and let's do something different.
Mm-hmm.
So they hired me about 10 years ago. Now it's been about 10 years, and sold my company, lickety split, sold it. It was a very successful company, and came over here to South Carolina from Arizona. And my kids were old enough, my 2 daughters, so they stayed in Arizona and became teachers there they had friends, obviously. And my son, he moved with us here to South Carolina. So now I've been with Beer Meters for 10 years.
Nice. So, getting into safety instruction, how did you find your way, from starting with beer 10 years ago to now doing this? Looking at your LinkedIn page, it seems like you're speaking to quite a few people at a time and some big conferences and things like that. So how'd that all unfold?
So I've always been somebody that I always believe in flow, ebb and flow. I always believe in just keep your mind open, your thoughts open, and don't ever put yourself in a closed-in box as far as your expectations. I feel that the road paid for us has been paid for us, and we need to stay awake so that we can travel down the proper road. And what's interesting is coming into Beer Meters, learning the industry, spending about 2 years developing my mental capabilities and grasping and wrapping my head around the industry, which is quite amazing. And it's just so large, and there's so much dynamic and so encompassing that it was just very exciting to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to soak up as much as possible, learning the ins and outs of our family company here in South Carolina, learning about what our business is all about, and learning what our customers' business is all about, and how we can connect. And after a couple of years of going to some big shows with my brother Joe Beer and my sister working here, my nephew works here, my dad still owns a company, Walter Beer,
Hmm.
and getting involved, going directly to the customer, showing them our tools, show, going into field training, showing them how they work with some overhead apparatuses, and going to some underground scenarios, some transmission. That was great, and just learning the company, the weaknesses and the strengths of the company. And right now, our strengths are what we've been doing, manufacturing our products
Hmm.
for about 38 years now, from scratch here in South Carolina. And so that was our strengths. Great, great products. But what were our weaknesses? And so our weaknesses were getting in front of our customers, making those direct contacts with our customers. And so after about 3 years, I went to the family and I said, "Look," I said, "I don't want to show our tools off anymore. I don't want to travel, and I don't want to be a salesperson. I don't feel good about it." I said, "I Our tools sell on their own." I said, "So let's take a different approach. Let's make relationships. Let's make lifelong connections." And I told him, I said, "I'm hearing a lot about incidences that are taking place because I'm out on the road. I'm hearing things and I'm seeing things. And the industry as a whole, at least 7, 8 years ago, the industry as a whole, these things happen, these events happen, and they're not really talked about. They're not really shared." So my perspective is they keep happening because we're not really learning from each other. We're kind of isolating, we're kind of insulating ourselves in these cubicles, in these territories, and in our footprint of the municipality, or the footprint of the cooperative or the investor owned, or even what I notice in a lot of these large companies is they isolate and insulate themselves even from the rest of their companies. Maybe they have many service centers, and it's a lot of hush hush. And so things are swept under the rug, and there's not really a lot of knowledge sharing and understanding the why behind these things. So I started going around and sharing lineman safety and tool training. So I would visit a particular company and we would talk about work procedures, proper tool procedures, proper body position, improper body position. And then I would relate these things to a certain incidents. Why did this incident happen? And then I started sharing their electrical reality and using our tools, which are so accurate, using our tools to prove their electrical reality and stop talking about theory. So I like to present these things not as electrical theory, but sharing their electrical reality and showing how their bodies couple with capacitance when they enter these minimum approach distance, or when they're using PPE in relation to maybe another phase behind them that they're really not focusing on, or situational awareness that they might be lacking. And then sharing why these instances have taken place. And I started learning more and more about all these incidences, and we started connecting with these utilities and the safety people and CEOs and operations managers from all around the country with different ideas, different thoughts, different work procedures, and
Hmm.
all these principles. We have this OSHA that we go from, this 1910.269, that our distribution, our transmission, our underground, we all use this OSHA 1910.269. And we use that as that's it. That's what we talk about. And then I noticed that a lot of folks, they take this foundation, which should consider the scriptures for alignment, because every rule that was written, right? Every rule that we are to follow, they were written because somebody lost a body part.
Mhm.
Blood was shed. So now we have a new rule. So the book gets thicker and thicker and thicker. See? But what's happening with the thickness of the book, these serious incidences, these serious injuries and fatalities, SIFs, these things, the numbers remain the same. And that's amazing. I mean, just ponder on that, just think about that. And what comes to your mind?
Well, the question why, I guess, or what, are these rules actually doing anything?
Right. And that's the point. So are the rules doing anything? Well, I think they are to a degree for sure. And I look at the OSHA 1910.269, and this is how I train it. I look at that as the foundation. And in order to build a house, you have to have a solid foundation, no doubt.
Mhm.
Okay. But what happens is most folks, they set this foundation and they forget about, when they think about safety. I look at safety as a dwelling place. So a dwelling place, you're looking at building walls. You're looking at building a strong roof system that can withstand hurricanes. Let's say they can withstand storms or incidences. Let's use it
Mhm.
as an allegory. They can withstand injuries. We can build capacity within this house to fail safely. And a lot of folks, what they do is they have a foundation and they're out in the open, standing on the foundation, and they're out in the open where the storms come in. And they might not have an event happen for years and years. But because they fail to build up a significant wall and hurricane, you know, a roof that can withstand hurricanes and serious injuries, all of a sudden they happen. It's like, how could this happen? How could these events happen? You see
Mhm.
what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I do. I have some questions here. So, just going back earlier, you mentioned their electrical reality. Now, when you say that, the question that comes to my mind is, so are they living in, not in reality? Are you saying that most people they're operating under maybe assumptions that aren't true,
And
or
that,
just maybe
that
explain a
is,
bit more on what you mean?
yeah. So the assumptions that aren't true. Okay. And the big thing that I see in this industry, and what I'll do is I'll share a slide with you on this particular subject, is complacency. It's one of the largest things that I see. And I kind of wrote up, and I'll send this, I wrote up a slide, and it's part of my current PowerPoint. And let me read this to you real quick. So in the middle, there's a javelinas. There's a herd of javelina. Okay. And I use this scenario as a metaphor for complacency. And I'll share this story. It's an amazing story of what I learned with complacency when I used to hunt in Arizona before I ever realized that I was going to be a safety instructor.
Hmm.
And this is the definition of complacency from my perspective. Feeling so satisfied with your own abilities or situation that you fail to work. Now, this is important, that you fail to work as a line team. See? And the electrical reality is, and this is where we don't realize our electrical reality, is we become complacent. We think we're so good at our job, and we really are. I mean, if you've worked in line work for 10 years or more, I consider that person, that journeyman lineman, to have a PhD in line work.
Hmm.
And it's so true. A PhD in line work. And they're super intelligent. They're geniuses, absolutely geniuses. But what happens is we can become complacent. And we become so sure of our abilities that we forget to keep our eye on the ball. And the eye on the ball is keeping our mind on the game of working safely. You see? And so we wear PPE. We wear our hard hats. We have our gloves on. Maybe we have our sleeves on. We have our dielectric boots on. We have all these things that really are to be the last resort, the last line of defense. All right. But our first line of defense that we have, and we must always remember as we're playing this game and keeping our eye on the ball, is we have to remain a line team. There's a guy in the ground. Okay. He's a journeyman. There's an apprentice that's in the bucket that just became a journeyman lineman, just topped out. Okay. And the guy in the bucket bumps his head on the conductor. He's got a hard hat on, but that should have never happened. Or the guy in the bucket bumps his shoulder against the conductor while his other part of his body is on a ground, maybe a pole ground, or maybe a guide wire. And there's a guy in the bucket that's supposed to be watching him working as a line team. But the guy that was on the ground working as a line team, he was in the truck looking at some paperwork, or maybe they were texting a girlfriend on company time. You see how this works? So the electrical reality is we create this thing that we think this electrical reality is our own deal. I got this. And we don't expect the worst case scenario because we're so good at our job. We don't plan for it. We don't work towards that. And we don't keep together as a line team because it's not going to happen to us today. It will not happen.
No, I mean, not only electrical, probably every safety topic or everything out there, complacency seems to be something that continues to pop up.
Yeah.
So why don't we shift gears a bit? And I'm interested in the electric culture of safety. You mentioned that before when we were chatting. Maybe just let people know, like, how that started and what it's all about.
So after doing this for about 6 years, going across the country, Brownsville, Texas, into Canada, going to Cayman Islands, going northeast, the southeast, the northwest, the southwest, and everywhere in between. All these different training, thousands of linemen, literally hundreds of service centers for all these years. And Beer Meters, we do this at zero cost to our customers or non-customers. We do this out of our pocket. We spend close to $1 million a year on safety out of our profits. And this is what Walter Beer wants to do. He wants to give back to our community. He wants to give back to our industry. He does not want to. And I asked him this when I first started. I said, Dad, why don't we get involved with some of these folks that have these nonprofit organizations that give to linemen? If somebody in that family perished, if somebody in that family cannot do line work anymore, and so these organizations, they collect monies to help supplement their livelihood, or that vacuum because that family person is no longer available in the family, and the wife's alone, the kids are alone, the dad's gone. Why don't we help them? And he's like, no, I don't want to do that. And I said, really? He said, yeah, I don't want to do that. He says, I would rather give back to prevent that from ever happening. Way before I would rather give back to after. He says, we need to prevent that. So after about 6 years, I was going through the country doing this idea, I was frustrated. It was about three Septembers ago, a little over 2 years ago. I was sitting at my desk, just coming back from travels, getting ready to go back out to travels, and I was frustrated. Just me, I was frustrated personally. And it's like, I don't see a change. I see no change. And here we are. I mean, I'm away from home a lot. the company, we're spending all this money to help. And yeah, many line teams, which I call them, in our industry, work methods were changing, the procedures were changing. All these things were changing because they received our training. And that's great. That's exciting and wonderful. But I didn't see a change in the overall SIFs. Okay. I just didn't see that. And I was frustrated. And then all of a sudden, this idea out of the blue came to my lap. It said, you're going to start lineman safety national webinars. And I'm like, that's a great idea. So it just so happened that at the end of October, 3 Octobers ago, that there was an incident prevention conference, a certified utility safety professionals conference for continuing points. And I just started speaking at these incident prevention conferences, which I still do today. And I just started speaking at some statewide around the country. And that's a lot of fun. I love it. And I went to these folks like Jimmy Vaughn, Danny Rains, some of the big heavy hitters, David McPeak. And I said, look, guys, I got this idea. And this idea is we're going to start doing lineman safety national webinars. We cannot do it on our own anymore. There is no change. And what we're going to do is you guys, your companies, or you personally, out of your own pocket, you're going to give back like we've been doing, like Beer Meter's been doing. You're going to start giving back. And you're going to fly out. You're going to drive out to our Live Line Training Center, which we have. That's available to anybody, anytime. Just got to reserve it, which we have here in South Carolina. And we're going to do this from that location. And it's going to be live. We're going to create these recordings. And then whoever is a member, registered member to ECOS, Electric Culture of Safety, whoever is a member, they get these webinars, these lineman safety national webinars every single month for zero cost. Zero. Beer pays for the recordings. Your company pays for you coming out and you share for free. That's it. And we're going to form a line team nationwide. And I didn't know back at 3 Octobers ago how these folks were going to receive it. And I said, hey, what do you guys think about this idea? And hands down, every one of them agreed to it. Let's go. Let's roll. And so today, not quite 2 years later, because Danny Rains really kicked it off in February of 22. February 22, he kicked it off with the 002 episode, Electric Systems Grounding. And he kicked it off. But since then, February, not quite 2 years ago, we have over 10,000 plus registered members to ECOS. I mean, folks around the country, and they're all getting these lineman safety national webinars now, 2 a month now, not one, but 2. These folks are coming in and they're getting them absolutely free. And it's just amazing what's going on here.
Yeah, no, that sounds super cool. So I'm curious more on, well, maybe if we just talk about these webinars.
Yeah.
Just for people who might be interested in them, like just as an example, what would be the topic, and then what is it like more of a safety seminar, a teaching kind of moment, or what? How do they kind of operate?
So that's a great question, and appreciate all that. So here's what they talk about. I'd let them know that whatever is on their heart, that's what I want them to share. I don't have anything lined up that I'm looking for. And it's amazing how incredible diverse and how credible relevant every webinar. We have 36 now, and how every one of them are so much different from each other. These folks are talking about communication. How do we communicate? How do we communicate with the younger generation? How does the folks that are getting ready to retire, that's been here for doing this for 40 plus years, how do they communicate with these new folks? How do we reach? How do we connect? we have a lot of folks coming in. Billy Martin, he's has three of them, and he talks about how does your brain function? How does the processes that go on in your mind? How do they how do they keep you from connecting with your fellow line worker? How do we get rid of that wall, and how do we find that reconnection? He is so good. I just enjoyed. We've had uh, what once was it one span power line. One span came in helicopters. They do a lot of helicopter work, and how uh, how that is related to line work, and talking
Mm.
about how the helicopters, how they are training and the pilots and what they are to recognize, and what are they supposed to, like, whoa, question, pause for a moment. How can we bring that in? um there's leadership. How do we grow? How do we become leaders? Because it's not something that you just are born with. It's something that you have to learn. You cannot go from an apprentice, a journeyman lineman, and a supervisor, a qualified employee, an employee in charge. You have to learn these things. These are great responsibilities. And grounding, how to set up your EPZ, how to set up your bonding, knowing that electricity will travel through every available path, including you. Since we are born out of dirt and our bodies are dirt and water, we're walking, living, breathing ground planes.
Hmm.
So how do we work through these things and understand our electrical reality once more? And let me share with you, I do have a flyer that's recent. Had Mr. Jason Brosnan and Mike Bear. I think you interviewed Mr. Mike
Yep.
Bear recently. So they're going to be
Yeah.
coming in July, and I'll send this slide to you. But this is a great example of what we have. And this is coming up in 2 weeks. So great folks. And Tyndale and Castle Rock Safety, they're all giving back. And, like Mike Barr, he's giving back out of his own pocket personally. That's his company. We had a lady come in last year, or last December, and she paid for it all out of her pocket. Summer Ray, Summer Speak Safety, and she paid for it. And her topic is a whole person approach to safety, as far as the person, what's going on with them personally.
Hmm.
Are they having issues, personal issues? What about their health? What about things that are in their mind, their worries, their concerns, not just on the job, but out of the job, and how these things are brought to the job site. And when folks are worried about things, when they have health issues and family, personal issues, how their safety level, the safety meter drops, and it's very dangerous.
Hmm.
But how can we mitigate these things and work through these things as a line team? Just all these webinars are just amazing.
Yeah. Well, this, I mean, everything that we've just spoken about here in the last 25 minutes sounds phenomenal. And it really does sound like what you guys are doing is a little bit a cut above maybe what you would find in a typical safety course, especially one with electrical. I do find that they get very technical.
Mhm.
And, we were talking about complacency earlier. And when it comes to something like complacency, it's definitely not so much the technical, but more almost the human side.
Exactly.
And I would probably urge people to sign up and join these groups. And what I was going to say was, we'll definitely link to everything you've been talking about in the show notes, and maybe you can share some of those documents as well. We can figure out how to get that to people. Just before we close out, Brent, is there anything else that maybe you've got coming up, maybe somewhere you're presenting that people could check you out, or even, maybe there's something online
Yeah.
that you got going on.
So,
What's coming up?
yeah, so we have a lot of resources that are easily obtainable if you go to Beer Meters YouTube channel and you go to Beer Meters YouTube channel. We have almost 200 videos, and about a third of the videos are regarding how to use our tools properly. The other two-thirds of the videos are all about safety. And some of them are short clips, and some of the videos that we have regarding safety and how to use our tools properly are long clips. And some of them are over 2 hours long, and they are free to download. They are. I get a lot of folks that contact me, and they'll write me an email and take a picture, and they'll say, "Hey, Brent, we used one of your safety videos. It was raining today, and we just brought the crew in, and we're watching you on and what you're talking about." And we'll do it live. I'll do a webinar where they'll go through a safety video. They'll stop it. They'll ask me questions. I'll ask them questions, and then they'll restart it. I do that all the time. You can go to safety training at beermeters.com. Contact me directly anytime to receive all the webinars. You can go to our YouTube channel and you can pick out all the promo webinars, the short 2-3 minute clips. You can find the subject matter of those, watch them, and let me know which ones you want the full recording of. I'll send them to you, no cost. And then also, we just started live, electriccultureofsafety.com. Just still under construction. It's we're still working through it, but we're going live now and it's available. And that's going to be open up to everybody worldwide.
Awesome. No, that sounds fantastic. So once again, thank you for coming on the show. It's been great.
Thank you, Jonathan.
We'll chat soon.
All right, brother. Take care, man.